Welcome back to Calvary Life. This is the podcast of Calvary Baptist Church. For the members of Calvary Baptist Church and anybody else out there who's interested in local church life, I'm Charles Uptain.
Hey, I'm Paul Thompson.
And today we have with us one of our staff members, our pastoral assistant, John Adams Uptain. Say hello.
Hello.
Glad you're with us.
John Adams, give us an update. What's happening in your life right now? Anything good happening in the last several weeks?
Anything new or anything?
Yeah, a couple interesting things in the past month. I mean, getting married to my lovely wife, McKenna, and also graduating, all in a span of about 2.5 weeks, graduating from undergrad, and it's been big, been busy.
Yeah, and with that, you experienced the first thing of married life, which means that you have to split holidays now.
Yeah.
And so because of that, you weren't here this past Sunday, right?
No, I wasn't.
You had to do Mother's Day somewhere else.
I was up in Birmingham for Mother's Day. It was a little different, a little interesting, but It was good.
Yeah, so we brought you today because we wanted you to hear the sermon that we had from Sunday. So that's going to be our topic today, is to just, I guess, give Paul a little bit of chance to talk a little bit more about this passage, because it's such a good, rich passage, so many ways to take it. And so I just wanted to let Paul have a few more minutes with that to talk about it on our podcast, and figured we'd invite you, since you didn't hear it the first time in the service, that you can be a part of this.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat on the bone for this one. When we talked about this passage in staff meeting leading up to, there's just so many questions and so many points. You could probably break this passage down into three or four different messages. One thing I didn't get to share, didn't take time to share on Sunday, which I think is really, if it's not helpful in understanding, it's at least really cool in imagining and picturing it. And I think the setting does matter. There's nothing coincidental in the scriptures. Jesus' timing is always perfect, and the setting is always intentional, and everything about it's aimed to teach. But one thing we miss, and I sometimes I don't talk about this stuff, Charles, because I don't want to seem like, one, I'm shilling for a potential trip for you to take with us to Israel,
right,
or I'm like, Pastor Paul, he's been to Israel. I don't want to sound like that kind of guy. Like, I know things you don't know because I get to go to places you haven't been. But it is very cool if you look at the context of where this encounter took place. Jesus teaching his disciples, and I believe fully, and John Adams, you've been there, Charles, you've been there, I believe fully Jesus specifically chose that site, not just this timing. If you think about Jesus' ministry, everything's happening on a divine timeline, which is important in one of the verses I didn't talk about Sunday. So, everything's happening on a divine timeline. Jesus is always in charge. He's never a victim of everyone else's agendas or pressures or, the politics, any of those things. There's a divine timeline being played out, known only by him, certainly not by the disciples. But in that timeline here, Jesus has all these disciples gathered, and he asked them in this particular setting, Caesarea Philippi, because it's right there in the text, came into the district of Caesarea Philippi. He asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" John Adams, what do you remember about that site, sitting there? And we talked about this while we were there.
Yeah, I remember it being, there's a lot of hills around there, and one particular large sort of cave right there, if I'm remembering correctly, where the people of the time would often offer sacrifices of various kinds, particularly of sacrificing children.
Yeah, maybe even human sacrifice, the Canaanites there. It's really cool. And this stuff we're talking about, you can look this up.
Yeah.
You can find good videos on this, good pictures of this. But if you go up on that hillside that John Adams is talking about, kind of if you can just picture a little stream that's flowing there, and sometimes it's bigger than other times, obviously during the rainy season and after snow in the mountains has run off, and there's a small stream or I don't know if you call it it's not exactly a river, but offshoot of a river running there, and Jesus is there teaching the disciples. And if you go up on that hill that John Adams is talking about, if you're facing that hill, if you turn and look up towards it, far to the left is the remains of temple to Caesar Augustus.
Yeah, Roman. Yep.
So you had temple worship there, and then there's that cave where, and you may read some different traditions and things, but where sacrifices were given, and sometimes even children thrown in there, and the way that they would know if the pagan Canaanite gods accepted the sacrifice or not was, did the blood come back or did the blood go away? Of course, that has everything to do with the tides of the water running through there. And then I don't remember exactly, because we're just kind of doing this off the cuff, but there's just a series, 3, 4, 5 more just down the line, literally in one place, a little temple to god Pan, which is really
Yeah,
a
where
picture of-
pantheism comes from. Yeah.
and really a picture of Satan. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got a goat figure, and there are a couple of more temple spots there, and it's almost like here's Jesus pointing out all these things, and all these different false worship of man, worship of Satan, worship of these false gods with demonic power behind them. All these things pointing out to them, and then asking the disciples, "Who do man say that I am?" And then when they give the answer, and he tells Peter, "On this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." It's fascinating because, one, in some traditions, that cave was referred to as the gates of hell. And then all these religions, it's as if Jesus is saying to them, you realize one day all these will no longer stand. There will be no more pagan worship. There will be no worship of emperors. There will be no demonic child sacrifice. Of course, we live in a demonic child sacrifice age still. That's called abortion, by the way. But we have this picture of all this paganism, godlessness, etc. He says, you realize the gates of hell will not stand against the church. One day, the church is going to prevail against all those things. So I think if the disciples felt the weight of that and understood the context of that, then it becomes even that much more powerful. God's going to conquer all these. He's going to conquer every one of these false systems. He's going to tear down every one of these pagan temples. He's going to prevail in every way over everything that denies him or is opposed to him. So I think that's kind of just some interesting context, and it's worth you looking up.
Yeah, to me, it just points to the exclusivity of Christ. That you've got all these false religions. There's all these ways that you could be, and really they existed together. You would see some. I can imagine some worshiping one, worshiping the other.
We just walk down to the next one, then to the next one.
They all just kind of existed at the same time. But then here comes Christ, and he is saying that his church is not going to be like these others that you can pick your way to heaven, so to speak. No, I am the way, I am the truth. So it just points to him being the only way to the Father.
Yeah, and then that just makes it so much more powerful. We talk about the keys. Look, guys, you're going to hold in your hands the keys to the kingdom of heaven. What all these people are seeking in all of these vain ways, these empty ways, these ultimately self-destructive ways, you have the way. You have the keys. I'm giving those to you. This is the weight of your assignment, your mission. It's a pretty heady thing to think about.
Yeah. I just think it's such a beautiful picture, and I've enjoyed that stop. That's one of my top stops on the trip to Israel, even though it's not in Jerusalem, which is obviously the holy city, so to speak. But just to stop there and just to get that picture in your mind is well worth it.
Yeah, and again, that backdrop, that context just helps you feel what's really happening there. Guys, you understand, you're going to be able to set people free from this. You're going to be able to give to people access to what it is they need most, what they yearn for most. And just know this is not going to be a competition. The church will prevail. You need to know that, because you think about this, Charles. You think about the mission he's given them. We see these passages just through our own context, in our own time and place. But he's getting ready to send these guys out to death, persecution and death. Yeah. And the odds are not in their favor. I mean, you know what I mean? This is nothing that's going to look positive here. This is not easy. You're going to be taking the gospel into, one, your immediate context, a Jewish context that is oppositional to Jesus as Messiah. We see that. We know that. A Roman world that is just full of pagan worship, and will also oppose you, not because they care about another God being introduced, but because they don't want their political system stability uprooted. And I mean, you're just going to encounter lostness, deep, dark, pagan lostness everywhere. Know that you're going to win. Know that this is going to succeed. So take heart in that.
Yeah. One other thing, I think you mentioned a little bit on Sunday, was Peter and his name. Of course, we hear him at one point at the beginning talked about as Jesus calls him Simon Bar-Jonah, which does that mean Simon, son of Jonah?
Yeah, son of Jonah, just his, literal family name.
Yeah, like who's your dad there is Jonah, and then now he's calling him Peter, and then he uses the word rock. And so, did you mention that about that is what Greek rock is and those kind of things? I mean, I know that's kind of simple and seems to be.
I'm usually
everybody knows that.
Yeah, I try to be careful with this because, well, here's my take. I think sometimes preachers can overpress overpress the Greek distinctions, so I don't want to overstate it. But there are two different words there. So like when he says Peter, this idea is, you're a stone. I mean, we might say you're a small stone, you're a pebble. But this rock, they're two different words in Greek. That's just the benefit, I think, of other languages sometimes of precision, where we might add an adjective, a descriptor. They just have a change in the term. But if you're just reading it, you might not get it the same sense. But I think what the passage is indicating, look, you're going to be a rock. And he is. I mean, Peter was a rock for sure. This is one of those challenges. I don't want to go off on a crazy detour. But in our Protestant Reformation understanding of things, we have to be careful that we don't minimize Peter, just like we don't want to minimize Mary, just because we're not elevating Mary or elevating Peter like Roman Catholics do. But no, Peter was significant, certainly prominent. If you're looking at prominent New Testament apostles, I mean, we don't rank them really, but I mean, Paul and Peter and James and John, and I mean, those guys are the peaks. But he was not preeminent. That was the point I made. So he's a rock, but this is a bigger rock. You're a rock. This is a building block. This is a foundation stone. This is a cornerstone. You're not that. You're like that. You're a part of that. You'll be built on that. But I think that's a distinction maybe lost a little bit from Greek into English.
Yeah.
He's signifying, Peter, you're going to be something you weren't before because of me. But as I said on Sunday, and if you weren't here, if you didn't get a chance to listen to it, it's a short message. Somebody told me it's the shortest message I've ever preached at Calvary on a Sunday morning. Probably true. But listen to it, and you'll get a sense of what we're talking about here.
You're just trying to get us out while it was raining real hard. That was the point. Let's be out in the middle of this. We don't want to wait and let this get by us, because that was a deluge that showed up Sunday morning at the end of church.
It wasn't raining in Birmingham.
It was raining big time here.
Did you go to church in Birmingham?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What time did you guys get out?
Noon.
Yeah, but they didn't start till 11, right?
They started at 11.
Yeah, he went to my old church, the church that I was a part of there at Hunter Street.
Okay.
Hunter Street Baptist Church with Buddy Gray, so that's where they went to church.
A lot of former Calvary people at Hunter Street.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Kind of interesting.
Yeah. People that have moved to Birmingham?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad they settled in. Who's the pastor at it?
Buddy Gray.
Still?
Yeah, still there.
Okay. Buddy spoke here, didn't he? Who did we have here?
I don't know.
Do you remember when it was one of our missions?
We had a pastor from Shades that came.
Yeah, Shades. Danny came from.
Danny,
yeah.
that's right. That
was Shades.
So anyway, here's one other verse that I didn't get to. Probably I'll make a connection to it Sunday when we come back up. But you get immediately to the end of that passage where Jesus is asking, "Who do men say that I am?" And he gets the answer. He gets the crazy answers from the populace. Mm-hmm. Flattering, supernatural, but insufficient. You're Elijah, Jeremiah, one of the prophets, and then he gets the correct answer, which Peter gives, and he says, "Peter, you give this because God gave it to you, and that's divine sovereignty. God shows you. That's revelation. It's not just speculation. It's not just his own intuition." And then he talks about the keys to the kingdom, which is a whole other subject we're talking about, and authority, the authority of the church, and the role and responsibility of the church to rightly mark true confessions versus false confessions, true confessors versus false confessors. That's what the church does. That's how we do membership. That's how we guard membership. Do you understand the gospel, and have you trusted in it?
It's what we hold each other by. If we have an issue of church discipline that we need, or someone who is falling into some public sin, what do we bring back to them? Bring back to the gospel. I mean, that's where we're going.
And this is probably worth an aside, Charles. This is where people need to understand the biblical sense, the biblical endowment of authority to the local church, which I don't think we see that much anymore. We don't have that sense of feeling. It seems like, I say this sometimes, but I don't give any details, so people probably either don't know what I'm talking about, or it doesn't make sense, or it doesn't stick or have weightiness to it. But the idea that church is so much more than just the program that you come and attend that you enjoy or benefit from. Here, we're going to put this on for you. Come, you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy singing and the fellowship, and you'll be helped. This will help you grow spiritually, and it'll give you some tools for your own personal life. But where's that sense of, well, the church has authority? Sometimes you might even hear people say, "Well, who are you to say that? Who are you to judge?" Well, it's the assignment God has given. We are to rightly judge. Who gives evidence of being a believer? Who who should be invited into the fellowship of the church, and who at times, and you hope there's super rare times, who should be excluded from that fellowship.
Yeah.
And that's what he's talking about.
And we should welcome that as believers. We should welcome our church family to walk alongside of us and hold us accountable. We need that. We need someone who, because, what does the Bible tell us? That our heart's deceitful. I mean, we can start really being blinded by things that maybe we are, giving ourselves to sin that we don't even realize. And we need a church family that's there, that's willing to say, hey, that's not right, or no, you don't need to be involved in that. We should look forward to having a church family that's that close to us.
Yeah, and not just matters of joining the church membership once upon a time. An up close example. This is hypothetical now because John Adams is already married, but imagine a scenario where you're really interested in this girl you've met, and you met her at school and everything. You're really starting to like each other and really enjoy spending time together, and all of a sudden it's really getting serious. What happens if because you're in submission to the Lord first, and you want to do what's God honoring, and you're trying to honor His word, but also because you have a right view of the church. What happens if the people in church, or you have elders in the church, beyond just your family, it says, John Adams, this is not wise. How would you respond to that? I can tell you almost invariably, anytime I've been doing premarital counseling with someone, and there's been an issue that's significant, like I find out, well, they're living together, and so I say, based on my own convictions and what I believe the Scripture teaches, and what I think is also best for you, this is the only way forward. Ideal would be that you recognize this as incompatible with God's design and sinful, repent of this, move out, and then let's resume premarital counseling. Right. If that's absolutely impossible and this can't be done, then I would say move out for a period, just make a break with genuine repentance, and let's go ahead and do this wedding. Let's go ahead and get it done. Let's forego that big church thing you had in mind 9 months from now and everything. Let's get this done. Let's get you living right under God. What typically happens, though, is option 3. I don't hear from them for a few weeks or a month. Then, my uncle, who's a minister, he's going to do it for us. But, I just wonder in general, does the average church member see the church having any input into that? Or it's like, who are you to tell me that's not your lane to run in? Like, you're thinking of taking a job, and we say, man, that's just, John Adams, that's not an appropriate job for a Christian to do. It's just not. I know you need the money right now. But is that we can't see God honoring that. We're going to strongly urge you, not based on our authority, based on what we believe the Scriptures say, don't do that. It's just the idea, does the church have any sense of authority in your life? And yeah. I think the answer, unfortunately, in far too many cases, is none. Don't divorce. Don't separate. Don't do that. Don't pursue that. Don't, those kind of things. Does the church have that sort of weightiness in the lives of our people? I think it should, because we're all under some kind of authority. God designed authority. That'll be another discussion for us to have, authority and God's gift of it.
So go back to, I think you were headed towards verse 20. And we got sidetracked. So
it's a weird verse.
Verse 20 says, "Then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ." Just off the cuff, right out of the chute, the first thing we got to understand in that is you don't take a verse like that in isolation. Yeah.
This is not like some sort of proof text. We do a lot better job, unfortunately, of obeying Matthew 16:20 than we do Matthew 28:18 through 20. Go into all the world. No, he says strictly. He told me to. He strictly said, "Don't tell anybody." So that's what I've been doing. Some of you guys are really obedient to this passage. That's not the point. The point of this, really, consider context first. He's teaching it to the disciples for a reason. And I think part of that's kind of like what we talked about, this divine timeline. He's working a plan for it. And I think it's clear Jesus wanted to make sure that the primary messengers of the kingdom understood who he was first. And it's clear that they didn't. We'll get to this. This is a sneak preview of what's coming up with Peter. It's clear Peter doesn't get it,
right?
Because he goes from saying, "Peter, you're the rock," and then the confession Peter makes, "On this rock I'm going to build my church." And then, how much later, how many hours pass till he's telling him, "Get thee behind me, Satan"? Why? Peter didn't understand Jesus' role as Messiah, that the Messiah must suffer. So, imagine this. He's telling them, he strictly tells him, don't tell anybody I'm the Messiah, because I don't want you to go out there and tell them the wrong kind of Messiah. I don't want you to stoke the wrong sort of expectations. And Jesus knew they didn't even get it yet.
Yeah.
Peter didn't get that the Messiah is going to be a suffering servant. A Messiah is going to have to die. And then I think there's some timing. Jesus says, this is comparable to John, in the account in John, where Jesus says, my time has not yet come. Let's not do this yet. I don't want to proclaim this yet before the appointed time of sacrifice, suffering, resurrection, that sort of thing. And then I think there's some practical sides to it too. You remember, Jesus has been embattled the whole time. It's just that underlying theme. Pharisees, it seems, I think I pointed this out Sunday before last. It seems like every time something good happens, the Pharisees, Sadducees pop up and like, here we are again. To me, it just seems like this is the strategy of Satan. Just get married, just graduate, boom. Here it comes. Get ready. You get a win. Enemy's coming. Going to try to steal away the joy of it, or diminish the sense of it, or bring you back down to earth again. And so they show up. But I think there's a sense of this where Jesus is trying to prevent premature conflict, because it's going to escalate, obviously, because we get to the point of the crucifixion week, Passion Week, and Jesus is saying things in answer to their questions. And at some point, when they ask him really about divinity, and it is as you say, and they're ripping their clothes. I mean, they're just going nuts over that, and he's waiting for that time. And I think, and this is something that I saw in a message Sam Storms had pointed out, which I think is good. I hadn't thought about that. Is that Jesus was probably in a caring, shepherding way protecting the disciples too. You guys go out there half-cocked, not knowing what you're talking about yet, not fully understanding. Talk about the Messiah's come, escalating these expectations of takeover and power and all that, and you're going to put yourselves in real jeopardy too. You're going to put yourselves in the crosshairs. But I think the biggest portion of it really is they did not yet understand. He had more to teach them, and they didn't fully understand Jesus as Messiah until he was crucified and resurrected.
Yeah.
So the commission is coming after, not before.
Yeah. Even the writing of the Gospels is coming after they understand.
Yeah.
So even though they're writing it down of what happened, those events themselves were happening pre their understanding, even though they're writing it as they understand.
So just think of the big timeline here. I'm going to send you out to, charge the gates of hell after you know that I've been crucified and raised, and I've given you the Holy Spirit. And none of those things have happened yet. So again, it's just another example of we have to understand scriptures in context and everything, and not just pull one out isolated. Like, well, that's weird. Why does he's telling them not to tell anybody? Yeah, on its surface, that seems strange, inexplicable. You dig in a little deeper, it makes sense. I'm God's sovereign over salvation history from beginning to end. When Jesus was born, what's the phrase Scripture uses? In the fullness of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When he's born, to whom he's born, where he's born, the circumstances in which he's born, socially, politically, spiritually, etc. Everything part of it, and just remembering, as we should know. Now looking in hindsight, what's most significant about Jesus' ministry?
Yeah.
Not sermons and miracles, as significant as they were, but atonement, resurrection, all centered around that. More than Jesus wasn't looking for just fame. He wasn't looking to just generate huge crowds, bands of followers that would try to, push him to the throne. He came to save mankind. And so I think that's helpful. This is a quote I found. The silence was not denial, but strategic delay. It was a strategic delay until, boom, he gives a commission clearly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that. I just thought it was good to give a few more minutes to that sermon, and now we enter the advertisement portion of the podcast, because there's a couple of things that I want to mention before we stop, and that's this Sunday night. This Sunday nights we're going to have a members meeting again and vote to purchase the property in Ozark, and so that's exciting, and so we'll do that, and then actually even have a interest meeting afterwards, just to stay in the sanctuary. Anybody that's interested in and how they can help from big to small. So you want to speak to who can come to that, which is, I guess, everybody.
Yeah, first, and we talked about this on Sunday, but let me say it again. I mean, what a great thing. I'm so glad God has blessed our people, and our people have responded with generosity in giving to this missions offering. You think about this, Charles. Last year, we set a goal of $40,000 for our Annie Armstrong offering. We exceeded. I think we were around 48, somewhere around there. And this year, we decided, all right, we're going to do this hybrid offering, and we're going to split them 50-50. And it was your idea, because I probably would have set a lower number, actually, on this one. Normally, I'm aiming high, but I thought, okay, why not? Can't hurt. We throw it out there. We put this $100,000 goal because that's based in reality. We really needed half that at least. We needed 50. We wanted to start with 50.
Right.
And lo and behold, we meet it as of Sunday or as of Monday. We're like 103 something thousand. So not only did we give above and beyond what we expected to give for the offering as a whole, above and beyond what we thought we'd be able to raise initially for the church plant. That's the biggest Annie Armstrong offering we've given in our church's history, and that's almost 75 years.
Yeah.
So to do that in combination is great. So now we're starting to put some legs to it. So Sunday night, we take the actual vote. We voted all the steps up to this point. We're going to take the actual necessary vote to buy the property.
Right.
And then the meeting after, the interest meeting, what would your involvement look like? So anybody in the church, and Zach and I will be leading that meeting, talking about the different roles and possibilities. As he said in a message, some will go. Some will be part of this new church plant to different levels of commitment and time commitment and roles. Some will go and be part of it physically. Many will give towards it. Everybody can pray. If you're looking for just some possible roles or just want to know what's up, what's there for me, then come. Sunday night, we're going to do it right after the service. This is just introductory. What does this look like moving forward if I want to be part of this?
And we're going to do this we're going to give the congregation a chance in a few weeks. I think it's on June 1st as an insert to say, hey, if you're interested in some way, they'll get a card there too. So we want to try to capture as many people as we can who would be any kind of interest towards.
We'll do this meeting again, just introductory, because we're going to get this thing rolling, and just, if you want to be part of it, now's the time, because we want to be as prepared as we can. Charles, you said this well. I don't know if you said it publicly in a service, or it was just in staff meeting, we were talking about it, making sure people understand we're not sending a church planter.
Yeah, right.
This is a church.
Yeah, we're a church who is planning a church, not sending a pastor.
Right. We're just not sending a guy and his family and saying, hey, good luck, and we'll send you a monthly check and we'll pray for you if you send us requests. This is Calvary planning a church. So our people, our DNA, our culture, our values, all those things.
Yeah. And I saw this well in a church, and this was actually before COVID, so 5 years ago now. I was at a conference in Nashville where a church where I was at the conference, they had just partnered with a church that was basically about to close their doors. It was about 15 minutes down the road from them, and they went into that church and redid it, and their people did it. So they would spend Saturdays down there working, and they were actually at the very final stages when I was at that conference. And the celebration the church got to have to see that this was something they as a church was doing versus, we're sending our money and somebody's going to take care of those things. It was just so much more, participating in ministry. It was the fellowship of the believers there working that project. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many ways that you can get involved here, and that just gets me thinking. Maybe doing something down the road that we all celebrate this together, or we're going to gather out there. I don't know. We'll be talking about that stuff as it comes.
Very exciting to get to. And then one other thing I want to mention is something that we highlight every year because it's so important, is our biggest evangelism strategy week of the year, which is Vacation Bible School, is right around the corner, June 9th. Through the 13th, and John Adams, I think you and I have a meeting right after this to talk about that. So, what's your role for this year's VBS?
Well, if you saw Justin's wonderful graphic, I think I'm a cowboy of some sort, with a couple other cowpokes.
I don't know what to call you guys. It's a train, but it's in the West. I don't know. I don't want to call you cowboys, pioneers, settlers.
Yeah.
What's the right word here? I don't know.
I kind of wish
it's something in the book. I'm sure we'll get it back to you.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Well, you got to come to find out,
I
think.
There you go.
So, I think it's going to be more train than Western, but we'll see.
So we're going to have
Stay
bank
tuned.
robbers, stagecoach robbers and those kind of things? Who knows? Who knows what
Josh Robertson can cook up?
Worship rally. So, but yeah, worship rally's coming. John Adams and Josh, and I'm going to be a part of that too. So excited about getting in there and getting to be a part of that again. This is something that I used to do every year, loved, and Zach has asked me to have a microphone again, so beware. I'm looking forward to that week of fun, June 9th through the 13th. I'm sure we still need workers, so if you're available, I think the meeting is June 1st after church to train the workers, but we want everybody in our church family to be a part of that as we have a week to share the gospel with these kids.
And even if you're not one of the teachers, if you're not one of the hands-on people and you're working that week, you couldn't be off or whatever, you don't feel like you're hands-on with the VBS, there's still a few things you can do.
Oh, yeah.
One, and this is not minimal, we need people praying not just in a generic prayer at the beginning, I pray for you, but daily, praying daily. The gospel's interwoven throughout the whole week, and so praying for the hearts of those kids that are there. Two, physical help is needed. Zach could really use some help in physical things, setting things up, taking things down, cleaning things up, getting ready for Sunday again, something you can do. And here's one that maybe you've never considered before, but could be very helpful. And could be real ministry if you would do it. Friday, I know Friday there's the emphasis at the end, the last sessions, parents are going to come in, they'll hear the last little bit, however that plays out. I'm not privy to all the details, but we're going to have a lot of parents, a lot of families here in our building that Friday around lunchtime.
Yeah.
They're going to hear. If you just have time to come by at lunch as a Calvary member, meet families, speak to families, encourage them, just give them a sense of hospitality beyond just their kids have been at VBS all week. It would be really cool if some of our people were here. Put on a Calvary shirt if you got one. If not, it's okay. Come and just encourage them and talk to them, invite them to church or get to know them. Just build some bridges a little bit. Our aim is not just the kids, it's the family. So
yeah, well, that'll be down in the gym, and I know we've got plenty of shirts and things down the resource area, so go buy one of those and stick it on
a T-shirt or a hoodie. Yeah, we need some rain jackets, Justin. This past Sunday,
we need umbrellas and all kinds of stuff.
Anyway, it's the ministry of the whole church. It's conveying to the community this is the whole church. VBS is not a kids ministry thing; it's a Calvary ministry thing.
Yep. All right. Anything else today? Y'all good?
Yeah, I think that's plenty.
All right. Well, I'm going to end like we normally do. For God, for Dothan, for the world.